Hi everyone, this is Matt from the Leach Library, and today I wanted to recommend a few books to you. We're going with the theme, the American Revolution today. So first off, we have this book here, John Adams Under Fire, and this is by David Fisher and Dan Abrams, so two authors. They both happen to be best-selling authors. This came out in 2020, this year, so it's very recent still. This tells the story of America on the verge of revolution and the life of the young John Adams and his key role in the trial of the Boston Massacre. The book has 12 chapters and reveals the events in chronological order as the book goes on. The authors draw upon the transcript of the Boston Massacre murder trial, using John Adams' own words to transport readers to colonial Boston, a city that at the time was rife with rebellion, where American and British soldiers and colonists lived side by side, and where the atmosphere was such that it seemed that war was drawing near. The authors write of a 34-year-old John Adams on the evening of March 5th, 1770. He was spending an evening with his longtime arts and social club, as he often did, when he and his fellow guests were alarmed by the ringing of bells. At first, they thought there had been a fire. They weren't sure what was going on, but quickly they learned the terrible truth, that British soldiers had fired on a crowd, soldiers that had been guarding the custom house. Many residents of Boston, including John Adams, began filling the wintry streets, and so began a very important chapter in the history of the American Revolution. This book goes on to discuss John Adams as a lawyer and how he agreed to represent the 5 men shot and killed by British soldiers, recognizing them as a team of patriots who died for their country. The book gives a detailed account of an important case that helped develop our own system of justice, and beyond that, does an amazing job of taking the reader through the sights, sounds, and smells of Boston life during the 1770s. So definitely recommend this book for anyone wanting to know more about John Adams himself and his early life, or wanting to know more about the Boston Massacre. Up next, we have this very comedic biography of George Washington. It's called You Never Forget Your First, a biography of George Washington, and it's by Alexis Coe. Another one that came out in 2020, very recent. The book starts out in a somewhat unconventional way, providing a few different lists pertaining to facts about George Washington. These include a list of his jobs, his titles, his greatest hits, as the author calls them, which basically means his greatest achievements, his pettiest acts, views on religion, his children and grandchildren, his likes, dislikes, closest friends, frenemies, as the author says, adversaries, favorite food and drink, favorite writers, common misconceptions about George Washington, diseases that he survived, and there were a few of them, and all the animals that he owned. This introductory section also talks about, it also includes a timeline from birth to death, from his early schooling to his heading of the Constitutional Convention. Throughout the book, Coe's writing employs wit, humor, sarcasm, and playfulness to engage the reader and distinguish her presidential biography from many other biographies. It doesn't take away, however, from the fact that she writes very clearly and expertly on Washington. Another characteristic about this biography that may distinguish it from other ones in this genre is that it doesn't solely focus on his political career. Yes, it goes through his travels and battles and penchant for politics, but it also goes over his love for horticulture and hunting, his growing up with a single mother, the illnesses that he endured, as I mentioned before, and more from his personal life. Based on the contents of the book and many reviews which I read as well, it seems this book appealed to many readers who were not typically very interested in reading biographies, So if you're uncertain about biography as a genre, but enjoy nonfiction reading, you may want to give this one a try. Again, very witty, humorous book, and expertly researched. So that is Never Forget Your First by Alexis Coe. Going back in time a little bit, this book is not quite as new. Came out a little bit over a decade ago, but it's very famous by the famed historian David McCullough. It's simply called 1776. So this book provides a very comprehensive account of perhaps the most important year of our nation's early history, if not the most important year of our nation's history in general. Like the other two American Revolution books that I mentioned, this doesn't have a lot of images, but it does have more than the other two. I believe there are probably about somewhere between 20 and 30 images that portray people and key events. McCullough's volume is clearly well researched. He quotes primary sources quite liberally and provides an extensive bibliography at the end. For those who might have read some of McCullough's biographies, 1776 provides a refreshing departure, painting the pages with a whole cast of characters, rather than isolating the narrative to one central figure. What struck me about this was what a close call the Revolutionary War really was, and what a colossal effort the British Crown made to remain in control of America. Their efforts were particularly intense from a naval perspective. Another thing that struck me was the initial battles were very unorganized on the part of the American colonists. Many of the soldiers were either too young or too old, and they were in dire shortage of arms and ammunition, while at the same time Britain had a large and very professional army. The author emphasizes the contribution on the battlefield, for without victory there, the Declaration of Independence wouldn't have held to the same weight that it did. So to sum it up, David McCullough presents here a very accessible book, likely to further inspire any American history aficionado or blossoming American history buff. Definitely recommend this book as well. Thank you very much for watching the video. This has been Matt for the Leach Library.